If you've lived in Albuquerque for more than a few years, you've probably heard about plans to develop on a piece of land that was once part of the Etrisco Land Grant on the west side. SunCal bought it in 2007 and renamed it Westland, but their efforts to develop it ended in bankruptcy. The current owners call it Santolina and submitted a master plan and zoning request to the Bernalillo County Commission. The county's planning commission recently recommended approval of the application with conditions. The County Commission is expected to consider the project in a special public hearing in late March. Now, the plan is controversial. New Mexico In Focus correspondent Floyd Vasquez sat down with representatives from both sides to discuss the arguments for and against the project.
The Santolina master plan is ambitious, and the application process complicated, technical, and political. We're talking about almost 14,000 acres of undeveloped land in southwest Bernalillo County. Developers say over the next 40 to 50 years, Santolina will be transformed into residential villages, business parks, a town center, an industrial business park, an urban center, parks, trails, open space, schools, roads, and utilities. The plan is to build 38,000 homes and provide 75,000 jobs. Joining us to talk about Santolina today is Jim Strozier of Consensus Planning, a key member of the development team working for Western Albuquerque Land Holdings, LLC. John Garcia, Executive Director of the Home Builders Association here in Albuquerque and a well-known figure in economic development circles. Rod Mahoney, President of the South Valley Coalition of Neighborhood Associations and the Vecinos del Bosque Neighborhood Association. And Virginia Necochea, Director of the Center for Social Sustainable Systems, a South Valley community group. We have links to all of your websites online. Thank you all very much for making the time to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Strozier, let's start with you.
Okay.
You live here in Albuquerque and are familiar with our state's economic, educational, and environmental challenges, not to mention existing investments in places like Volcano Cliffs, Mesa del Sol, and Rio Rancho. Why Santolina? Why now?
That's a great question, Floyd. And you know, one thing that we need to remember when we look at this is that this is really looking at long-term growth and the potential for long-term economic development. The Mid-Region Council of Governments, Mr. COG as we call them, they plan for the growth. They work with UNM's Business Bureau of Economic Research, BBER, and they put out population projections. And those population projections anticipate 450,000 people by the year 2040 in our metropolitan area. Where are they going to go? Well, some of them are going to go in infill sites downtown. I certainly hope so. Mesa del Sol, Rio Rancho, and that area. And then we think that Santolina represents a good place for some of those folks to also land. But key to that is going to be providing jobs. And you mentioned at the beginning, we're planning for, and we've got a land use plan to support 75,000 jobs. That's key in our growth planning.
Okay. Now, and the Bernalillo County Planning Commission recommended approval of the master plan with some conditions. Santolina has filed 5 appeals related to those conditions. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, we certainly hope that, as happened with the Planning Commission process, which vetted every issue concerning the plan very thoroughly, that the County Commission will look at the appeals, weigh the pros and cons associated with those, and certainly we hope approve the master plan with a set of reasonable findings and conditions. Our concern with the conditions has been that they're clear, understandable, and defensible for the county, and that those conditions not contradict or be instead of things that are being done in the development agreement. We haven't talked about the development agreement. We should probably talk about that at some point because that's a critical aspect to this, and it relates directly to the findings and conditions for the master plan.
Okay. Now, for some, water is a primary reason they oppose Santolina and other developments. But in July of last year, the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority issued a letter saying they have the capacity to service Santolina with water. A water authority spokesman told us the letter does not obligate the authority to provide any water or services. That letter and the authority's response to our questions are posted online. So Virginia, your group issued a report that says the Santolina Master Plan threatens South and North Valley acequias. What is the threat?
Well, for us, I mean, the livelihood of the acequias is directly connected to the health and well-being of our river. And because we know that we are in a severe state of drought, such an important balance, a water balance that has to be maintained in our space, we have to really be careful about maintaining that balance, because anything, a new development such as the size of Santolina does pose a threat to that intricate balance, that is vital for acequias in the valleys, not just in the South Valley, but beyond. And for us, a letter that simply states that there's availability of water is not a reassurance of any type of the livelihood of the acequias, right? Because one of the main things that we're asking is, okay, if you have this letter of water availability, but where specifically is that water going to come from, when we know we're already facing such a shortage of water, right, and drought? And so where will that water come from? And then how would that subsequently impact the farmers, the acequieros, the people who use the land, who basically their whole livelihood depends on, the acequias in the river?
We'll talk about that for a moment, the role the acequia plays in the lives of the residents of the North and South Valley.
Mm-hmm. Well, the acequia culture is such an integral part of New Mexico, right? When we think of New Mexico and just the beauty of this space and the cultural fabric of the state, acequias is, at the forefront of many of the thoughts of the community members who live here, and the acequias play such a vital role in, again, that water balance and the river and the livelihood of people and agriculture production. And I mean, we can go on. And so for us, the protection of the acequias and the farmers has been at the forefront of many of the discussions that we've had.
And briefly, what information do you have to suggest that the current water supply is insufficient to service Santolina?
Well, I mean, we just have to look at the journal. Recently, they published a major story that stated already the drought conditions that are in effect. And because we know those allocations for water are already capped, they're already capped, right? Their allocations are capped. Then what we're asking is for a development such as the size of Santolina, then where would any of that water come from? If we're already facing these, set allocations, so, logical conclusion is it has to be, those depletions have to be offset by water rights that are currently held along the river.
Okay. Now, Mr. Garcia, you're a well-known economic development specialist with decades of experience right here in New Mexico. Now you're the executive director of Home Builders Association, representing almost 600 members who are involved in home construction and remodeling industries. Why Santolina? Why now?
Well, the reason we want it now, or it's needed now, is because we have to plan for our future growth. This is more about accommodating the growth that's going to happen in the future, rather than generating or perpetuating really the growth. I think Virginia brings up some really good points, and we in the development community respectfully acknowledge the issues of water, growth, economic development, and what this does to our culture, our way of doing business for many, many years. This is a master plan A kind of a project. It's the first step in planning long-term for the community. So the choice we have is we either go into a process, a deliberate process of planning now, or it'll just come patchwork, piecemeal over the years, and the outcomes will clearly be worse, by history we'll judge, than if we do nothing. So there's been a lot of discussion, and there's been a lot of meetings, and we surely don't want to make this a contentious issue at all. In fact, working with the community is really important. But to really start a process of planning and looking at where the jobs are going to be. I think what I see, the citation so far, the estimates on job growth are a little too ambitious in my opinion. But we need to plan for where that growth is going to be.
Well, let me ask this. What about existing opportunities for home building and commercial development? There's the comparable one of Mesa del Sol, but there's also Rio Rancho with its city center. When we go visit that, it's still surrounded by empty land. I live up on the west side where Volcano Cliff seems to have a lot of capacity. What about those areas?
Well, I mean, Rio Rancho, a great community, but their deliberate process for planning was a kind of a checkerboard area, so they really can't have contiguous space. And so they're kind of stuck because they didn't think long term. The Mesa del Sol project is obviously sitting a little bit idle right now. It's a great space, but again, it's planning for the future. It has economic development core, as Santa Elena would as well. You know, the west side it's busy. This brings jobs to the west side, which is something we love about the project. But you know, there's been a lot of discussion about a lot of details that will be really dealt with years out when it comes to the other development process. The Master Plan A is really a vision process. It's the beginning of the discussions, and we sure would like to engage everybody in the conversation and try to work through the issues. And there are issues that we see like you see. We all want to be successful with this development.
Okay. Now, Rod Mahoney, one of the things people like to complain about is apathy, voter apathy, community apathy. But when it comes to community opposition to Santolina, apathy does not appear to be a problem. Tell us about the South Valley Coalition of Neighborhood Associations and others who have come together to oppose Santolina.
I think the community has done a very good job, actually. This started out very slowly. This has been ongoing for a long time. We've been to lots of meetings. Yes. And no parties after these meetings, but nevertheless, you know, it's been a long process, and I think it will continue to be a long process because this has to go through the Bernalillo County Commission process, and you know, who knows how long that's going to take. So a number of people, this has resonated with a number of folks because it has so many far outreaching components associated with it. This is a very complicated plan. Information is very extensive. It has a large footprint and encompasses a lot of resources. And it actually, we have the feeling that ultimately it also takes resources away from the other needs of the county. South Valley in particular, East Mountain area, there's infrastructure needs that are unfulfilled ultimately. There's lack of resource dollars to enable those. We're certainly not against any kind of development. We're certainly not, you know, citizens against everything. I mean, that's obviously not the case here. But if you start looking into sort of the details of this, and also you talked about this is the first level, well, ultimately this enables a commitment and an obligation ultimately for the county to provide funding dollars ultimately for this. So if you take a look at the economics of this and the no net cost and the details associated with the financial aspect of it, it looks to be very high risk associated with that. Also, there's resources that are natural resources that are coupled into that, the water resource. I want to actually return to a point that Jim made about the Mr. Cog studies. I would actually suggest that your viewers go to that Mr. Cog website. It's actually one of the very best websites that you can actually get to be able to educate yourself on a lot of the planning activities that are going on. Mr. Cog comprises 3 counties, Sandoval County, Bernalillo County, and Valencia County, and that's really where the majority of the population of the state of New Mexico resides. And of course that requires lots of resources, lots of funding, and that sort of thing. There's a current plan that's actually in draft form. There's these transportation plans that occur every 5 years that actually document trends in population, the distribution of population, the potential of funding dollars, all that sort of thing. And this 2040 Municipal Transportation Plan is a very good one because for the first time there are analytical tools that are being applied to the planning process that do scenarios.
So this is information that's the Mid-Region Council of Governments?
Yeah, Mr. Cog. So the thing to look at is the 2040 Transportation Plan, and it actually recommends that because we have limited resources at all funding levels, both local, state, federal government, we need to make really good decisions, hard decisions about where to invest these dollars. And the community feels that really the risks do not outweigh the benefits for this large plan.
Okay, well, you know, the economic impact of Santolina includes $37 million in tax increment development districts, or TIDs. Jim, are these tax breaks?
No, they're not. The way that those financing mechanisms work is that the developer pays the upfront investment. So, for instance, there are several TIDs on the north side of I-40 that are currently in process. And those will help contribute to the investment in the water and sewer infrastructure that's been and is being constructed on the north side of I-40. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions about TID. We could probably do TIDs. We could probably do a whole show just about that. I don't want to get into that level of detail. I guess I would just say that in our view, the economic investment associated with new development, Santolina being one potential place for that new development to occur, grows the pie. The best thing that we can do as a community is to grow that economic pie so that we can all be more prosperous, have good jobs, have a better tax base to support our public schools, CNM, UNM. All of that gets better if we raise the economic vitality of the community and provide places for investment to occur.
Now,
that's
Virginia,
really important.
Now that makes sense, doesn't it? We do need jobs, don't we?
Yes, and I actually, that's one of the points that I wanted to touch back on is, you know, we hear that and we've heard it at every single hearing. That's the magic four-letter word of the day, jobs. And for me, what I think of, especially as a community member, is that jobs, but we have to look at this whole situation holistically, and jobs at the expense of what and who, and you know, who will ultimately benefit from developments such as this. And when it's something so massive, such as Santolina, we're not talking about a tiny footprint. We're talking about a large, significant footprint. We need to really engage in that discussion of assessing the impacts at all levels. And so yes, while I hear you that jobs are, you know, it's a key word, it's definitely something that people go back to, is that we can't just look at that with, you know, like this tunnel vision and blind it to the other impacts that Santolina would pose in the long term, you know, even beyond the boundaries of Santolina. And so, and I think that there's also, you know, we talk about Santolina generating this, you know, economic boost and so on, but, you know, like what Rod said, you know, there's also disinvestment that comes along with that. I live in the South Valley, and if you drive down the South Valley, we're in a state of disrepair. And so, I mean, I can speak to that and attest to that completely, that we need adequate resources in many of the established communities in our county and beyond. And so when I hear, you know, that, I just, you know, feel that that investment needs to be at the established communities, right?
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. And we'll come back. Maybe we could do an on the web on this. But there have been two good articles published about Santolina recently. One is in Albuquerque Business First and another in the Albuquerque Free Press. The special meeting in front of the Bernalillo County Commission is March 26th. We'll link information about this topic from our website, NewMexicoInFocus.org. Jim, Rod, Virginia, and John, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.